The morning sun filtered through the terminal windows as Flight 892 prepared for departure from New York to Los Angeles. Passengers filed through the jetway, their minds occupied with meetings, vacations, and destinations ahead. Among the cabin crew stood Sofia Martinez, a seasoned flight attendant whose reputation preceded her, professional yet uncompromising when it came to what she believed was right. Sofia didn't just do her job. She commanded the cabin with a presence that made even the most demanding travelers think twice before pressing the call button. Her colleagues respected her dedication, though some whispered that her strict adherence to principles sometimes clouded her judgment. As she performed her pre-flight checks, everything seemed routine until her eyes landed on him. A middle-aged man, settling into seat 23C, clean-shaven, dressed in casual business attire, he appeared unremarkable except for one detail that made Sofia's blood run cold: a bright red baseball cap emblazoned with "Make America Great Again." To Sofia, that hat wasn't just an accessory. It was a declaration, a symbol that represented everything she stood against. She could feel her pulse quicken as she watched him adjust the cap and open a magazine, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing just rows away. "Can you believe this?" she muttered to her colleague Emma during drink service. "That hat is basically a political statement. It's going to make other passengers uncomfortable." Emma glanced over, then shrugged. "Sophie, he's just reading quietly. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be." But Sofia couldn't let it go. The sight of that cap gnawed at her principles, pushing her toward a confrontation she knew was coming. After serving the pre-flight beverages, she found herself standing at row 23, a professional smile barely masking her disdain. "Interesting choice of headwear," she said, her voice carrying an edge that nearby passengers couldn't miss. "Making quite a statement today, aren't we?" The man looked up briefly, his expression neutral. "It's just a hat," he replied simply before returning to his magazine. "Just a hat?" Sofia felt her face flush. The dismissiveness of his response only fueled her determination. She returned to the galley, her mind racing with justifications for what she was about to do. "I'm going to ask him to remove it," she announced to her crew. "It's offensive to other passengers." "Sofia, please," Emma cautioned. "We're not the fashion police. Don't do this." But Sofia was already walking back down the aisle, her heels clicking with purpose. She stopped at row 23, arms crossed. "Sir," she began, her voice now formal and cold, "I'm going to have to ask you to remove your hat. It's making other passengers uncomfortable." The man slowly closed his magazine and met her gaze. "I appreciate your concern, but I'll keep it on, thank you." The cabin grew quiet as nearby passengers began to notice the confrontation. Whispers spread like wildfire through the economy section. "Then I'm afraid I must inform you that your behavior violates our policy on creating a hostile environment," Sofia continued, her voice rising slightly. "Either the hat comes off, or you'll need to deplane." The man studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Without a word, he stood up, gathered his belongings, and walked toward the exit. His calm departure only made Sofia more unsettled. She had expected resistance, an argument, something to validate her actions. Instead, his quiet compliance left her feeling strangely hollow. As the doors closed and the flight prepared for takeoff, Sofia tried to convince herself she'd done the right thing. But something about the man's dignified exit nagged at her conscience in a way she couldn't quite explain. Hours later, as the plane touched down in Los Angeles, Sofia felt a mixture of relief and righteousness. She had stood up for her beliefs, even if it meant making a difficult decision. As she helped passengers disembark, she held her head high, already crafting the story she'd tell her friends about standing up to intolerance. But her confidence shattered when she saw him waiting at the gate. David Chen, the airline's chief operations officer, his expression grave. "Sofia," he said without preamble, "we need to talk. Now." Her heart sank as she followed him through the terminal to a private office. The room was stark, clinical, with nothing but a table and 2 chairs under harsh fluorescent lighting. "Do you know who you removed from that flight?" David asked, his voice dangerously calm. "A passenger wearing inappropriate attire who was creating tension." David slammed a folder onto the table, making her jump. That passenger was Jonathan Blackwell, the owner of this airline. The blood drained from Sophia's face. "What?" "Yes," David continued, his eyes boring into hers. "The man you publicly humiliated, the man you forced off the flight because of a hat, owns every plane in our fleet, including the one you just worked on." Sophia's mind reeled. The room seemed to spin as the magnitude of her mistake crashed over her like a tidal wave. "He's requested to meet with you personally," David added. "I suggest you prepare yourself for the consequences of your actions." Minutes later, Sophia found herself in the executive suite on the top floor. The office was imposing. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city, expensive artwork adorning the walls, and at the center, a massive desk behind which sat Jonathan Blackwell. Gone was the casual traveler from seat 23C. Now he wore an impeccably tailored suit, his presence commanding the room with quiet authority. He gestured for her to sit. "Tell me," he began, his voice measured, "why did you really ask me to leave that flight?" Sophia stumbled through her explanation, each word sounding more inadequate than the last. She talked about passenger comfort, company policies, creating a welcoming environment. But even to her own ears, it all sounded like hollow justification. Jonathan listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finally fell silent, he leaned forward. "Do you know why I sometimes fly economy class, Sophia?" he asked. "It's not to save money or to test my employees. It's to understand how we treat our passengers when no one thinks anyone important is watching." The weight of his words settled over her like a heavy blanket. "Today, you showed me that personal bias trumps professional judgment in my company," he continued. "You didn't ask why I wore the hat. You didn't consider that I was reading quietly, bothering no one. You assumed, and then you acted on that assumption with authority you don't possess." Sophia felt tears threatening but fought them back. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Sorry isn't enough," Jonathan replied. "This airline was built on the principle that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their beliefs or background. If my other employees can't uphold that standard, then we failed." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You have 2 choices: resign immediately or undergo extensive retraining in professional ethics and customer service. If you choose the latter, know that I'll be personally reviewing your progress. There won't be a third chance." "I'll take the training," Sophia said quickly, her voice barely audible. Jonathan nodded. "Very well. But understand this. Today you nearly destroyed your career over a piece of fabric. I hope this serves as a lesson in the dangers of letting personal opinions override professional responsibility." As Sophia left the office, her legs shaking, she passed colleagues who quickly averted their eyes. The story had already spread through the company grapevine. Her reputation, built over years of service, lay in tatters. Walking through the parking lot to her car, Sophia reflected on the irony of it all. She had thought she was taking a stand for tolerance, yet her own intolerance had nearly cost her everything. The red cap that had seemed so offensive now appeared in her mind as a mirror, reflecting her own prejudices back at her. That night, as she lay awake replaying the day's events, one thought consumed her. How had something as simple as a hat revealed so much about who she really was? The weeks that followed were grueling. The ethics training was intensive, forcing Sophia to confront her biases and examine her actions from every angle. Jonathan Blackwell kept his word. Her progress was monitored closely, and she knew that one misstep would end her career. Slowly, painfully, Sophia began to understand the lesson. True professionalism meant serving everyone equally, regardless of personal feelings. Respect wasn't conditional on agreement. It was the foundation of service itself. 6 months later, Sophia found herself working another New York to Los Angeles flight. As passengers boarded, she noticed a woman wearing a shirt with a political slogan she disagreed with. For a moment, the old impulse flared. But this time, Sophia simply smiled and offered the passenger a warm welcome. In seat 23C sat a businessman reading a magazine. Sophia recognized him immediately. Jonathan Blackwell, once again flying incognito. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her an almost imperceptible nod. She had passed the test. As the flight took off, Sophia realized that sometimes the most valuable lessons come from our biggest mistakes. The hat that had nearly ended her career had ultimately saved it, teaching her that true strength lies not in standing up to others, but in rising above our own prejudices. And somewhere at 35,000 feet, as she served drinks with genuine warmth to passengers of all beliefs and backgrounds, Sophia Martinez finally understood what it meant to truly serve.